Hello everyone and welcome to our Utilizing Configurations webinar. My name is Mitchell Rollo and here joining me is
Renee Bergstresser, and we're both software training consultants with our Manage Education department.
So our agenda for today is relatively simple, only 3 things, but there's a lot to talk about within each of these. We're going to start off with just creating configurations, and depending on why and how you're creating them, there's a different way to go about creating them, and we'll be covering not only how to create them, but why each one is going to benefit you depending on why they need to be created in the first place. Then we'll be covering on an alternative use for configurations. We usually see them on the service side of things, but they can also be used during the sales process. And we'll cover a couple different ways they're useful there. And then we'll get to my favorite part of the presentation, driving home some service efficiencies. How are we going to get the most out of not just configurations, but ConnectWise as a whole by using configurations to their fullest?
Absolutely. So to start us off today, we're going to get into creating configurations. And in part of this, we do want to go over the practical steps for how you get these records into your system and you can determine which one's best for your company. But we also want to hit on some of the value, because I do think that we usually get stuck in, well, configurations should be managed workstations and servers, but they can really do so much more than that. And if you leverage them for sales, like we'll have a whole section just on that, we'll get a little bit more of the big picture of what configurations can do. So to start us off, what can you track with a configuration? We like to say anything that you can sell or manage can be a configuration.
Exactly.
And in this case, our popular examples being managed workstations and servers, also leased hardware. So if you're loaning hardware to a client, that's a great example for, or a great use case for creating a configuration for them.
Yep.
We can also have detailed information on current sales opportunities. So we won't get into this too much because this will be Mitch's section in just a moment, going through how we can utilize these for sales. But really, they're an excellent repository for all of the information that we gather during a sales qualification process. And we can help out our team by using these. And then service history. One reason why managed workstations and servers are such a popular use case for configurations is that if you receive a ticket about an error, we generally want to know which machine this is affecting. Is this an error on the server? Is it the CEO's machine? Is it one of the technician's machines? Well, if we're creating tickets for these errors and connecting them to the workstation that will need to be serviced, what we end up with is a really great service history for all the different machines. We can see how many tickets they're receiving and what types of tickets. This can help us make a lot of decisions, both for sales and service delivery.
And then we'll also know how long our team is spending working on those tickets, which offers a whole nother layer of benefits on top of it.
Absolutely. And then lastly, customer preferences. This might be a smaller one, but if you think about some custom fields that we have within companies, we can list, oh, is this person VIP? But with configurations, we can get into additional detail. We can build out surveys that our team can fill out and really get to understand the client a lot more and associate it with that company record. So a service configuration setup, we did want to get into the setup tables a little bit and really just show you what this would look like. As we're building out a configuration, we have the ability to add on additional questions. And those questions tell whichever team member is filling out this configuration or creating it, really what sort of information do we need to either service this configuration or to gather during this part of our process. Looking a little bit closer at the 2 different sides of these questions, you'll notice we have some simple questions like, what is the operating system of this machine? What is the IP address of this machine? These details can be really helpful for a service technician, and what's nice about this is that we don't necessarily have to rely on plain text answers. We don't have to just have boxes that we hope our team will fill in. We can do part of the work for them by making this either radio button options, so really easy to select, less chance for human error typing something out, or drop-down lists, which I really like because it allows you to pick from the available options and it makes it a little bit easier for your team members to enter the information that you want them to enter.
Yeah, these custom questions and answers are really going to be the biggest advantage of using configurations in the system, is the amount of flexibility you have with documenting whatever it is you're documenting, be it servers and workstations, sales information, security devices, audiovisual equipment, telephone equipment, whatever type of devices you're managing, it's going to need different information you need to track about it, and configurations are great for that. Also with the answers, as Renee mentioned, the text area, you could just have a text box available for every single question, and that could get the answer for you, but your technicians are not going to enter information, or at least reliable information, if it's difficult to do. We want to make it as easy and streamlined as possible. If I'm just selecting from a drop-down, that's 2 clicks, whereas I would have had to type something out manually, and that leaves a lot of room for error. So customizing these questions not only creates consistency, but also helps encourage your team to actually enter in that information just by making it simpler for them.
100%. And then when we start using things like the advanced configuration search, we really want to make sure that the same answer or the same product that we list on a dropdown isn't going to show up in a variety of different ways across our configurations. We want to make sure that this particular operating system is always represented in this way so we can quickly search for it and use some of the other features in Manage.
Yeah, dates are a perfect example. Everyone writes their dates slightly differently when they're writing them out, but if you're just entering in an actual date field, Manage is going to do the translation for you, so it's going to be saved the exact same way, so it's easily searched across every configuration in your system, so everyone can find what they're looking for.
So hopefully we're thinking about some ways that we can utilize configurations, not just for managed machines, but maybe for sales or leased equipment certifications. Well, there are a couple ways that you can start creating them, and we did want to go over some of the more complicated ways in detail. Manually, that would really just be going to the configurations list, creating a configuration from scratch, which means you would pick the configuration type, fill out the details, and associate the company. Now, you could also convert directly from products, which we really like because typically, if you're managing a workstation or server for a client, it begins with a sale. You sell them the workstation and then you start servicing it. Now, that's not always the case, but especially for loaned equipment, it's probably going to come from some sort of transaction, some sort of sale. What we can do is we can convert a product on, say, a sales order directly into a configuration. That way we can start tracking this configuration, this managed workstation or server, immediately and start logging tickets against it.
And save a lot of time because we're using information that's already listed on that product to populate that configuration automatically.
For sure. And then also one completely automated way to set this up is through ConnectWise Automate. If you're scanning your client networks for managed workstations and servers, those can be created and managed automatically for your clients. So that's probably the easiest way of these to get those into your system. And then lastly, we do have our data import. Like I mentioned, you can convert from a sale because a lot of times these machines start with a sale to our contacts. But we'll get into this in just a moment with our business case, but if you're going on site and there are a bunch of existing machines, this might be the best way to import all of those configuration details into your system at one time.
Yep.
So the first one that I kind of want to delve into, because it's a little more detailed, is our product conversion, and we are starting on a sales order. So we have made a sale, we are selling this to Chris Craft Boats, and we really want to make sure that we have a record that we can start tracking service history on. So we're going to go to the products tab. You'll notice that we actually have a workstation that's been associated with the sales order. This is what we quoted for them on an opportunity, converted to a sales order so we can bring it into our database, to our system. And now we really want to make sure that we have this as a configuration record since we will be managing this for the client.
Of course.
We would select the convert option on the product record within this sales order. And then we have the ability to associate the appropriate configuration type. In this case, it's a managed workstation. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that that's associated and create this product.
Yep, and that conversion is really going to streamline the whole process. We only did one product right here, but odds are you're probably selling a bunch of equipment to a customer at a time. We can convert that all over at once and make sure every different type of product we sell has the appropriate configuration. So if we had 10 of that workstation line item, we'd actually be creating 10 different configurations, and they'd probably all be set to the same type, but if we needed to mix it up, we could. And another thing I saw in there that I wanted to call it was the ability to add an SLA. So if we're selling some devices that may have a high priority SLA associated with them, this is very common whenever I see partners working on critical servers. Tickets for those need to be worked before tickets for other machines. So we can actually make sure that SLA is applied from the moment that configuration exists, which would then in turn apply to all of its service tickets.
Very cool. So we do have a business case that kind of hints on why we'd want to be using that data import feature I mentioned. So Enrique, our project consultant, when he goes on site to scope out a new installation, part of his job is documenting the devices they already own that we will now be responsible for servicing. So in this case, there's a lot already on site. He's scoping it out. He's making his lists. And we just need an easy way for him to get these all into Manage at the same time so we can start working those tickets efficiently and effectively. This is where we'd want to be using our data import. So if you're not already familiar, this is a relatively new feature, just a couple versions back. We have a new data import screen within your system module. One of those new options there, of course, is to import configurations. What's really nice about this is that you download the template directly from the screen, so you know the exact format that you're going to need for the information. You can either copy and paste from existing Excel spreadsheet into this, or just start filling it in right from there. Then you would come here, select the import button instead, and be able to import all of that information into Manage in one go for a new client.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of partners that have difficulty where they send someone on site and like, oh great, the customer has all this existing infrastructure that I need to add in. And it's great if it is a server or a workstation that Automate can scan and find, But a lot of times there's other types of equipment that you need to manage and account for within your instance of Manage. This is where that data import comes in, the ability to mass add those all at once, assign appropriate types, fill in fields automatically, just saves a ton of time.
Absolutely. And it's also something where you could use this spreadsheet to send to your client and have them validate it or have them help with filling out some of the information if that's the sort of relationship that you have. Another use case that we really like, a workflow rule that we can use to help manage is sometimes we're not necessarily selling equipment to a client, but we might be loaning it. It might be a particular software license that they have for a specific amount of time before they need to renew it with us, or we could be giving them actual pieces of hardware to use. Well, this is where we want to make sure that if we're loaning someone a piece of hardware for the next 3 years, we want to make sure that in 3 years we don't forget to create that renewal opportunity. We don't leave a server on their site without billing for it, as we should be, to increase our revenue. So in this case, what we recommend is using a workflow rule to track configurations. If we're leasing it for 3 years, we can set an end date, 3 years in the future, and then have a workflow rule look out for configurations expiring in 60 days. That gives us just enough time to evaluate maybe the agreement that we have with that client, make sure that it's profitable, look into how much we should be charging them so that we can really benefit from, of course, us purchasing or loaning that hardware in the first place, and then reach out to them with an opportunity and enough timing to renew them before we would have to take something back or start losing money on our side.
Of course. A common use case I see for this is SSL certificates. That's something that, as the technology provider for your customer, they're are putting on you to make sure is maintained. If it expires without them being notified, that looks bad for you. So we want to make sure that we are proactive about that, and this workflow rule makes it very easy to track those SSL certificates, which we're tracking as a configuration, and just proactively notify our customer and make sure that they have the opportunity to get it renewed before it does expire.
Absolutely. So certifications, equipment, whatever you might need to really look out for your customer and make sure that you have that up to date for them. And not only that, but by creating this, you have the ability to have Manage looking out for you, letting you know 60 days before it expires. But you also have all these items recorded in your company profiles, essentially. So that company record in Manage now shows who has an SSL certificate, when it's expiring, shows if they have leased hardware from you. And you can use searching for other business purposes as well.
Absolutely.
Another pro tip we wanted to throw in is that we like to use this for internal certifications. So let's say you have a certification for AWS. You can create this as a particular configuration type in your system and apply it to your internal members listed under your internal company record. So your internal members that also have contact records under your My Company, that's where you would be applying these certifications as configurations. And you can track here as well, kind of like our loaner equipment, when these certifications expire. You can have separate workflow rules to let you know that you need to get your technicians recertified. That way you never have a gap in their knowledge, especially if this is something that's really attractive to your clients, that they have these certifications.
Yeah, definitely want to keep those up to date. So we talked a lot about how we can use certifications on the service side of things, but they can actually do a lot for us as well on the sales side. So for that, let's go ahead and take a look at Fred, our project manager, and see how he can benefit from this. So for Fred, the handoff from his sales team can be a bit of a pain point. Details discussed while evaluating the customer do not always make it to the end of the project. This is a problematic thing for him because this prevents his team from delivering on what was sold. If he doesn't know what was discussed during the sale, he can't deliver on it no matter how hard he tries. So we really need to make sure that that handoff goes smooth. What are some of the things that he cares about? Well, he needs to know, when does this project actually need to start? When does it need to be completed by? What was that discussed with the customer? Who are the stakeholders? Who actually needs to be kept involved? He knows his team, and he might have the primary contact on the project, but odds are there's other people at that client site who need to know and be kept in the loop on where this project is at all times. Were there any special considerations on milestones that needed to be completed by specific dates, certain thresholds that needed to be met? Was there any out-of-scope work? If there was, how is that going to be handled? As the fact is, even if we didn't plan for out-of-scope work, you probably should have, because it always can come up. So you should have a plan in place on how to handle that. And were there any discounts associated with it? All this stuff needs to be, and probably was, handled during the sale, but it isn't always carried over to the product itself, and Fred is at a disadvantage now because he's missing some or maybe all of this information.
And what's nice about this is that you could have this as part of your sales playbook, but if it's not something that's really easy for your team to fill out, really straightforward to fill out, it probably won't be.
Yeah.
So by creating a configuration that has all of these leading questions, we can have these answers and have them logged in Manage, where even if that sales member moved on to a different company, even if they received a promotion or are no longer in that role, or if the sale was completed months ago, we don't have to try and dig for all that information.
Or
it's listed there. Or remember, it's listed there for us.
So we can set up configurations just to track the sales information, and that's actually something our sales team does here in ConnectWise Manage as well, just to track, okay, what's the projected start date, when's the projected end date, who needs to be involved, all that great detail captured on configuration. And because not only did we customize the questions, we customized the answers as well. It's very quick and easy to get this standardized information entered in. You mentioned the playbook, and they need an easy way to get that in. That's exactly what this configuration is going to do for your team. A couple other things on here: number of users involved. If you are selling something that requires a great number of offices, the budget, decision makers, all that great stuff can and should be documented so everyone in my team can easily reference this information. We talked about our sales team and our project team, but odds are, as this customer's relationship evolves with my company, other people are going to need to know and come back and reference this information. So even once we complete this project, these questions may come up again, and if we don't have the answers recorded somewhere in a standardized way, they're probably going to get lost.
And it also might be nice if we're focusing on a particular sale, maybe an installation, we could have questions about the other services that we offer. And we don't necessarily need to push those sales at this point, but we could record their response, whether they're interested, definitely not interested, if they have any concerns or further questions. After the sale is completed, we could use that to continue to upsell them, and we don't have to make a call as if we don't already know their preferences. We've been talking to them a good bit during this portion, so let's retain all that information and not make them repeat it.
Yeah, if this information doesn't get entered and logged in an easy to find way, it's not exactly useful to us anymore. So what does this process look like? It's actually pretty simple. As that sales rep gathers the information through phone calls, meetings, emails, however they're interacting with their customers, they're going to be filling it out in our configuration custom questions, a standardized list that a sales admin has probably put together based on what they need to know and they need to keep track of going forward. So not only what they need now, but like Renee mentioned, stuff that could be useful later on if we ever want to upsell these customers at a later date. The configuration is then tied to the company, and the project team can easily pull up that as needed since everything in Manage is going to be linked together. Projects is linked to the company, so is that configuration, maybe even connected to the contact as well, just to make things even a little bit easier. We can even add the configuration onto those individual project tickets once we start working, so we can actually have that information displayed right on that main screen with everything else. Another great tool that ties directly into that marketing aspect and upsell aspect is going to be the configuration advanced search. So we've created all these detailed custom questions with detailed answers that vary by configuration type. How do I actually find what I'm looking for now? This is where the advanced search is going to come into play under the configuration screen. If we come in here, there's a little checkbox up here that says advanced search, and that is where the screen really starts becoming useful. It adds these additional fields down here, the big ones being specific configuration type, questions, and answers. And since all of our answers are going to be pre-formatted now, based on what the question was it a date, is it a currency, is it an IP address, it's going to be easier to actually search for and find those answers since there's not going to be extraneous information clogging up the system, making it confusing trying to find what I'm looking for.
And really, we're focusing a lot on, in this presentation, on service efficiencies and sales, which we just went through. But this tool can be extremely powerful for communication and marketing.
Oh, yes.
So if you spot a particular error, maybe you're alerted by Microsoft that there is a problem with one of their services or products, you can really quickly come into here, find all of your clients that have this, and reach out to them specifically. So not bombarding all of your clients, just those that need to know. Let them know there's an issue. Let them know what you plan to do to help, what they can do to help themselves. This can also prevent your dispatcher or your service team from being bombarded if there are any issues with the things that you resell or the things that you support. And for marketing purposes, if you know that if an SSL cert is going to expire in a certain amount of time, if a piece of hardware is going to become less valuable, or if they would need to upgrade, you can also use this to do targeted marketing. I mean, you are their trusted advisor for their managed services, so you can tell them, hey, we really think it'd be good for you to upgrade, or because you have this, you might also benefit from this, and send them those targeted marketing emails this way.
Yeah, once we find the set or subset of configurations we're looking for based on questions and answers, we can send the contacts associated with them directly to the communications manager, so we can either email them in bulk, or maybe just create activities for our sales team to go through column one by one if we want a more personal touch. Either way, we're making sure everyone is getting communicated to based on the configurations we have in front of us.
So now we're going to get more into driving service efficiencies. So looking at your service team and how you can get them to buy in to ensuring that configurations are attached to tickets and that they're using them effectively. So Andy, our service technician, he can resolve most tickets remotely much faster than it takes him to document his steps. And we hear this a lot.
Very often.
Technicians are phenomenal at their jobs, but what they do not like is entering time, documenting steps, reaching out to the customer. So what we would like to do is use configurations and use some other tools that integrate with Manage to make their lives easier and accomplish this task, since we need it so badly.
Yeah.
One thing that you can do through a Manage ticket is you can log in via Automate and or Control. Now, of course, Automate is going to give you some visibility into those machines, possibly their entire network, but with Control, you can actually remote in and solve issues or solve problems. Remote into the server, remote into the workstation. What's really nice about our integration with Control specifically, or how Control works with a managed ticket, is that when we launch a session, we have the ability to log the details onto that ticket automatically. So saving our technician a decent bit of time trying to enter their time or log those details.
I really like this example because it ties back to Andy doesn't want to enter information in because he's too fast at his job. Well, if he uses this configuration, it makes him faster at his job, and now it documents it for him on top of that. So not only is he resolving more issues faster, but even when he's not adding any information in manually, we're still tracking when he connected, how long he connected for, specific details about IP information and how long he connected. And if we have extended auditing enabled within Control, we're going to add a link to that video recording in the actual ticket notes as well. So we can easily reference it for that additional auditing information.
And that's probably something that I should have emphasized even more when we came to this screen, is that it's the fact that this managed server configuration is listed on the ticket, that with one click, he can get into the view from Automate or get into a remote session via Control.
Yep.
That is what's enabling these boxes to appear, these options to appear, where that can be done really quickly and where the logging can take place. If the configuration wasn't associated, he's going to have to reach out to the client, ask them to join a remote session, find out exactly which server, find out exactly which machine, and that's really just taking up more of their time communicating with the client when we can just handle this for them more effectively.
Yeah, trying to schedule a remote session oftentimes takes longer than actually resolving the issue.
Yes. An added benefit of having those configurations on the tickets, not only does it make it less work for the customer for you to assist them, which we never want to make our customers do any more work than they need to, because we are being paid to help them. And it makes it easier for your technician. They don't have to reach out to the customer and try to get that information. What it does for us from a management perspective is it gives us a detailed service history. If we really are using those configurations on all of our tickets, making our technicians and customers' lives easier, we're making our lives easier as service managers, as company owners. What we have in this particular configuration, we've drilled in, we can see every single ticket that this configuration was added to, which that should represent questions, problems, errors related to this specific machine.
In this case, we also saw their recurring maintenance scheduled on there as well. Those tickets already scheduled for that configuration. So we see the recurring maintenance and the I need help ticket was in there. So something clearly went wrong there. So again, we can see everything that's going on with that specific device.
Absolutely. And what we can do with this even further is not only drilling into a particular server to see how are things going, what types of tickets are being associated with this machine, we can create service trend alerts using workflow rules. So if there's something, if we have a particular configuration type, like server, and we know that 10, 18, 20 tickets in 30 days should be a red flag, we don't have to continually hunt for that. We can set up a workflow rule to alert us when any number of tickets in the past 30, 60, or 90 days have been created for a single configuration. And that's really what this workflow rule is doing. It's looking for servers specifically, so it's not going to run on machines or anything like that. It's going to look for server configurations that have had more than 10 tickets in the last 30 days and let someone know that this needs to be addressed.
Yeah, having that service history first enables your team that if they open up configurations, go, hey, looks like this thing's having a lot of tickets. Well, that's great that you see that now, but why wait until someone stumbles across it? Let's notify ourselves automatically every time that happens once we cross a certain threshold that we think might be a problem.
Absolutely, and we can have that send directly an activity created for the service manager to review or whatever would be best for us to handle this. Keeping with the service theme, we have Chris, our service manager. his team prioritizes their day based on SLA goals. If a ticket for a device is created with the wrong SLA, it's way more likely that their goal will be missed. Now, we know that our team's busy. We may offer multiple SLAs to our clients. It can become a little bit overwhelming to try and track which tickets on your calendar, which tickets on your service board need attention now.
Absolutely.
So what we generally do is we would create workflow rules to ensure that we're getting warnings when we're getting close to breaching an SLA. That keeps our team in the know, prevents them from having to do any more work to know how they should prioritize their day. Well, the other part of that situation is those workflow rules are only beneficial if that SLA is being applied.
It's true.
So if the SLA isn't on the ticket, we have nothing to track. What's good news for us is that configuration SLAs, like we looked at in the product conversion, where we can set the SLA as the configuration's being created, when those are applied to ticket, it overrides any other SLA that's been associated. So if we have an SLA for that particular, a default in the setup tables, kind of a standard SLA that we offer our clients, if we have something more advanced for our agreements, because they have signed an agreement with us, we can then override that with the SLA on the configuration. And that will be what our workflow rules will use. That time frame for respond, plan, and resolve will be what our workflow rules will use to keep us up to date on those.
Yeah, and these SLAs are being applied automatically when these service tickets are associated to configuration, which we're doing already, since of all those other benefits we've talked about so far.
And then we did want to get into a little bit more of the details for how service tickets are affected by configurations being added. Well, in this case, if we were to go to our configuration search, this is essentially walking through what our ideal process for a dispatcher or a service team member who's receiving an error. What should they do to help that client create a ticket for this error? Well, if we're on the phone, the first thing we probably want to ask is, who is this? And then we want to see which device is having this error. So you're seeing this issue. Let's find the specific configuration, of course, because that's what's going to allow our team to remote in and resolve this quickly. When we drill into that specific configuration, we have the ability to quickly create a ticket using the Create Ticket button at the top. We can confirm all of the details based on our questions and then create that ticket in one click. Now from here, you'll notice a couple things default automatically. The configuration name will default into the summary field. This would be a great time for our dispatcher to add in additional details, a quick summary of what's going on. But what's nice about having the configuration name there is that if we were to search on our service board, we could find really quickly any other tickets that have been created from this configuration.
Yep. I hear all the time talking with partners that it takes too long to create a ticket when someone calls in. And the reason that happens is because there's 20 different ways to create a ticket in Manage, and you're probably going about it the wrong way based on why you're doing that. So if someone's calling with an issue, creating it from this configuration is going to save you so much time because you get the company, the contact, the configuration, the summary, the SLA, the agreement, all added in automatically when we just simply create it from the configuration itself.
Absolutely, and the SLA. The most amount of birds with a single stone is what we would call this method officially. Like Mitch mentioned, the company is going to be listed automatically. That's one other thing that you don't have to hunt for. And also that SLA. So the SLA, you'll notice this field can't be changed, but that's going to be pulling from the configuration record. Another thing is if you're maybe looking at your service board now, thinking through this, noticing that a lot of your tickets don't happen to have a configuration attached, well, we can solve for that. Even if these tickets are coming in via email and the configuration's not being added, it can be really easy for our service manager or dispatch manager to go ahead and add these on. And it's due to our split screen feature here. As you'll notice, we have the configurations pod, or the configurations column, where right now these have 0 and they appear to be hyperlinks because we can click into them. What clicking on one of those hyperlinked zeros does is it opens up the split screen, which will list all the configurations that could be applicable to this ticket. We can quickly search and select, almost like bundling agreements, just select the checkbox to attach the configuration from this ticket. We don't have to enter the ticket. We don't have to do any other details. We can handle this all from the list view.
Yeah, there's no loading at all. We just pop up the configurations associated with that company and just check off the one that's related to the ticket, and now it's added in. And as a dispatcher, I can just go down the list, making sure every new emailed ticket in, because those are the ones usually missing the configuration, make sure that it does get attached on automatically, so my service team is good to go as soon as they open it up.
Absolutely. So we've looked into really how to create a ticket from a configuration, so to get that attached off the bat, how to quickly add them to ones on the service board. Well, how do we help our team stay accountable for anything that could slip through the cracks? That's why we would create a workflow rule. It's our admin running in the background, making sure that everything is running smoothly. If it notices a ticket that doesn't have an attached configuration, And if you look at this closely, you'll see that the ticket type is server or workstation. We know that needs to have a configuration attached. We don't want to be running this on sales tickets, but we can run this on anything where it should have a configuration. And the ticket's opened, it's been assigned. Let's go ahead and alert the person who's assigned to get that configuration on there immediately. Because remember, this affects our SLAs. This can affect how we can allow our team to work on this ticket.
Another really big benefit of once we have those configurations attached is now we can leverage Automate even further. So because these configurations, oftentimes, if they are workstations or servers, were created from Automate, well, now we know which device in Automate we need to actually do our automation with. So if we ever need to run scripts on those devices, we might not even need to log into Automate. We can actually do that from Manage using workflow rules. We can have workflow rules scan our tickets for specific criteria. I often see this tied to using a specific type, subtype, and item. Like in this case, there's a piece of software that I need to install. Well, I know what needs to be installed based on the type, subtype, and item. I know I have a script for that in Automate, and I know what device is missing that because of the configuration. So why do anything more? Let's have this workflow rule find that ticket, install that script, and everything is good to go. What's even better, if for whatever reason things are not good to go, that script does not install correctly like it's supposed to, well, we can go ahead and update the ticket automatically. If the script succeeds in installing it, great, close it out, mark it completed. If it does not, well, we'll change that to a status that indicates we need a human pair of eyes on it to get a deeper insight into what's going on.
And what's great about this is it's, of course, taking some of the load off of your technicians, preventing things from slipping through the cracks, allowing them to work on things that need to be more hands-on. But this is also really helping out your client or your customer, because instead of them waiting for one of your team members to become available to remote in to create the script or to do this manually, you're having this automated in the background. The minute that ticket's found by the workflow rule, the script is being run, and they have much shorter wait times.
And our results are logged in the ticket internal analysis and audit trail, so we see everything that happened. Also wanted to call out my favorite configuration report. This one here is going to show us a ton of useful information on really, am I actually delivering my service in a way that is bringing me in enough money? The big tile here I want to call out is this average cost. We can very easily see now, based on the amount of time we're spending on our configurations, what our average cost is and see, okay, well, I know how much I'm billing for this device. In this case, I am not billing that much per device, and this is a problem for me. I'm spending way too much time, and therefore money, trying to resolve these issues. I need to put more automation in place and maybe bill more for my services to account for the amount that these tickets and configurations are costing me.
So we did have some key takeaways. That's all the material that we had for you today. Save time by creating configurations in the most efficient way possible. Hopefully we've done enough to impress upon you all the benefits of having configurations, not just for managed workstations and servers, but really anything where you can make use of the details they can hold. Use custom questions for sales qualification process. This way, you really have all of that detail to use later, not only for upselling them, not only for making sure that everyone on all these handoffs, the service delivery handoff, the finance handoff, has information that they would need to communicate with this client effectively.
That information is logged for future use.
Absolutely. And then always attach configurations to tickets. If you've done the work to create them, you can set up workflow rules. You can do so much in advance, but if they're not being added to the tickets every time they're created, you're a little bit limited on how well they can help and protect your team.
Yeah, you're missing out on one of the most valuable pieces of information. We lose out in that report I showed you, a lot of our workflow rules. There's just so much less information we have at our fingertips.
First of all, thank you all so much for providing so many questions for us in advance. We should have a good list of items that have been on your list to have answered in this particular webinar.
So for our first question that came in from Braun, is there a way to have the Microsoft license pull into the configuration automatically? And unfortunately, this is not possible currently with the standard functionality, but that is something that could be created through an integration if you were savvy enough in playing around with the APIs. But the standard out of the box, there's no integration in place to pull that in currently.
Our second question was related to configuration attachments. So wondering if there were any limitations to the number of attachments like photos that we could have on configurations or documentation. And no, there actually isn't a limit. So any PDFs that you need to add, JPEGs, Word documents can all be added to your configuration records and kept there for reference.
Yep. And we had a couple questions coming in regards to how Automate and Manage are going to work together in regards to configurations. The first one is, when creating new workstations, we include details such as the purchase date, expiration date, and asset tag. How can we ensure that Automate will sync to that particular asset instead of creating a brand new one? In that case, when you're working with brand new assets, you're going to want to make sure that automate itself is what creates that configuration asset inside of manage. There's no way to sync an automate device to an existing configuration, but since this is a brand new asset, just let automate create that new configuration itself, and then you can add in that additional information if automate isn't able to detect it on its own, which oftentimes it can. If it is something we can detect on our own, we can actually leverage these field mappings to map that information into that new configuration automatically. But whenever there's something that cannot be, such as an asset tag, that's something that's added on after the fact, not actually represented inside the device anywhere, that just needs to be added to that new configuration that automate created.
Perfect. Additional questions for the automate and manage integration. Will there be a time when we can change the asset configuration types for items such as manage workstations? So manage workstation and manage server is hard-coded on the manage side and cannot be edited. However, you are able to select other configuration types to sync your devices. And this will look a little something like that. In the asset template, you would go into edit and you can see the automate product, what it's being seen as, what it's being discovered as there. You can connect it to what the product is in ConnectWise Manage, and then you can see the configuration type there as well. When you select that drop-down, you should be able to select from all of your available configuration types, not just manage workstation and server.
Yep, and that previous screenshot I showed you where we have those mappings selected, that is what allows us to map information from automate to those new custom questions within those different non-standard configuration types.
Perfect.
Our next question is about automated renewals from Jory. Is it possible to create an opportunity out of an expiring warranty configuration? It is not possible to create the opportunity itself, but you do have two other options that I think work pretty well. The first is you can use a workflow rule to create an activity automatically. This is typically created for the account manager, but it can be for anyone in your organization who's going to be handling quoting for these renewals. And it's very easy to create the opportunity from that activity. There's actually an opportunity link on that activity. It'll be blank since we don't have one yet. And it's automatically going to pull in all the details from that actual activity itself to save some time creating that opportunity. But this is not your only option. If you're using Cell, you have an option that I think is even better and saves even more time, and that's using something called quote demands. Quote demands are going to monitor your manage instance for specific events, in this case, such as those expiring configurations. And when it finds one, it'll go ahead and create a quote with a template automatically. So this is what it's going to look like to set up in Cell. The top part is what kind of quote I'm creating. In this case, I'm using my hardware quote template, and I'm creating it for Andy. And that bottom section is which configurations am I looking for. In this case, things about to expire within 30 days, specifically of that managed workstation configuration type.
And this is probably my favorite piece of automation because it's taking a lot of work out of the quoting process. You've already set the expiration dates on your configurations, probably a long while ago, and now as it's up for renewal, not only are you being notified that this is a potential opportunity, but you would simply go into Cell and then see a quote that's in the appropriate type of template for this sort of sale, asking you if you would like to renew this particular machine. And you can really easily send that out to the client and move on to the next step. So how can I utilize, this is more of a pure manage question, how can I utilize configurations in manage for password protection? So we're happy to say there are some options here. It is specific to the security role that the member is assigned to within their manage member page. You can see here that we have two different options relating to configurations. This first option is deciding whether or not you want configurations to display passwords. So for an admin, I might want all passwords displayed. For someone on my finance team, I might not want to give them any access to passwords. So if they were to go into the configuration and see a password field, they wouldn't be able to read the password. It would be blocked out from their view. Now the second option, it says just configurations and it gives you a customizable selection. So when you select customize, it allows you to choose which types of configurations you want this member role to have access to. So not only can you might say, hey, show all passwords, but for this particular role, like for this particular role as a tier 1 technician, I only want them to see workstation passwords, not server passwords, or something like that.
So our next question came in from Steve, and he wants to know how can we clean up manually created configurations once we implement automatic or synced configurations? And I've seen this same situation occur not just with manually created, but for ones created automatically through a previous RMM tool. If you're ever changing from one to another, you're going to see new configurations created from the newer RMM tool, and we need a way to go ahead and associate those together. So there's just actual couple steps I would recommend to clean those up. The first is to update the configuration status of the older configurations to inactive. This can be done pretty quickly if you do it from the configuration search screen by type. There's a mass action there, so you can very quickly update all those older configurations to inactive, so you know those are the outdated ones. And then the second thing you want to do is child those older configurations to their newer configurations. I know within Automate, there's a tool that can do this automatically when it first comes on. I believe it matches on the MAC address, but for other manually created configurations or configurations from another source, this can be done manually by going through each device, going to that configurations tab, and manually childing the older version to itself.
For sure. So this is our top recommendation. If for some reason a different integration created a bunch of configurations incorrectly, as you might have noticed during that first step, you do also have the option to delete configurations en masse. But for the purposes of keeping your records and knowing exactly what was being used previously, we really like the idea of inactivating them to keep them from being used, but childing them so that we can record how that machine was passed through the different services we're using for RMM.
Yeah, keeping that historical record intact is really useful.
And so those were the questions that we got in advance. We also got a couple questions just as we were setting up for this webinar, so we added them here. Where can I find the data import? Data import, where you can bring in all those configurations en masse, is in the system module. It should just be called the data import screen. So go there and you can both download the template and upload it into your manage instance. Also, can I import configuration questions and custom fields? This is possible. So yes, you can. The question, though, must begin with a Q, and then custom field must begin with custom, and then have a colon just afterwards. Doing this lets the system know during the import that this is a question that's specific to this configuration type, or that this is a custom field that's been built onto this configuration type, and will ensure that it goes into the appropriate field. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if you were adding a bunch of custom questions and custom fields, you would want to use a different spreadsheet per configuration type so that it'll all line up just properly when you go to import it into your database.
Yeah, and that's to make sure that all the right questions get added to the right configuration type. Since it is matching just on the name, we need to split them out by type because the names could match.
Absolutely. And can I create a template from a configuration type? Now, this would be so nice if we could pull this up and have all of our custom questions and fields already listed out, but at this time you cannot. You would have to create a template per configuration type and add in those custom questions and then the answers for each device. Now, you could save that template to use later when you add on more of that type of machine, etc., but you would have to add those questions in yourself to the template.
Yep. So we also had a couple more come in. This one is in regards to the manage and control integration. Where can we enable the screen recording to be included as part of the ticket? So there's two things you'll need to make sure that you do have in place. The first is you'll need to have extended auditing enabled within Control itself. The second thing is you will need the ConnectWise Manage extension configured within Control. Once those two have been configured and set up, we will be able to pull in that information and sync it over to Manage, including that screen recording. The next one, can you convert products to configurations more than once? And unfortunately, this one is going to be no. Every time you do convert products to a configuration, we're going to record that it has been converted, and you cannot record it a second time. And you also cannot record products to an existing configuration. So it's always going to be a one-to-one relationship, product to configuration. Absolutely.
So let's see, do we have any additional questions?
I do. I see a couple so far. And the first one is, can you please show how and where to include answers to sales questions and how to reference them later to service the client? So this is going to be done on the actual configurations themselves. Probably the easiest place to access this is the configurations tab of the client you're recording the information for. I'd recommend creating your own custom configuration type. We saw a couple in the screenshots both during the webinar and our Q&A, such as sales configuration or pre-sales or whatever you want to label it as, something that indicates that it's going to be a different type used on the sales side of things. And then you can record all the information in there. And then as far as referencing it later, you're going to reference them in the exact same spot you created them from that configurations tab of the company.
Okay, we had another question. So is there a way to make it a requirement to attach a configuration to a ticket before it can be closed if there isn't one already there? Now, we can't make this a requirement, but we are able to use workflow rules to assist in this process. We can have workflow rules running on service tickets that do not have configurations and alerting the resource that they're required to add a configuration. We could even, in a sense, we could have a workflow rule running on tickets that are being closed out that don't have configurations to prevent this from going through, to move it back into an open status, for example.
Yeah, you can kick it back into an open status, make it sure the status indicates that it just needs more work done on the ticket itself. Maybe more information such as, oh, they need the type and item, whatever extra information your ticket needs, using a workflow rule like that to reopen it and message those assigned resources and let them know, hey, I know you thought you were done, but you forgot a very key step. You need to go ahead and finish this out as well. All right. That does appear to be it for our questions.
Okay, so thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right, see you then.